And once again, it is my great pleasure to welcome everyone to today's GGP Connect webinar series. This is first time for me to chair this meeting, so we are also getting more and more people involved in the organization of the event, as you can see. In general, the GGP Connect webinar series is dedicated to different countries presenting their experiences with GGP, their contributions to GGP. And today we will have great pleasure to host Ari Jónsson from Icelandic team to share his experiences with the GGP in Iceland. Ari is a demographer, of course, but he's also working for the government, so he's a very busy person. So even more, we are grateful to him that he found time to share the Icelandic experiences with us. And I will not be stealing more time from Ari. I will give floor to him. After the presentation, we will, of course, have some time for questions from the audience. Yeah, Ari, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Just gonna find the slides here again. Okay, can you see the slides?
Yes, everything works great.
Okay, great. Yeah, so yeah, good afternoon, or what should I say this time of day? And thank you for having me. Today I'm gonna tell you a story about. Why is this not working? I'm going to tell you a story about fertility in Iceland, and this is a story in three parts. The first part is about stability, the second is about a rather sudden break with that stability, and the third is about the limits of what we can learn from the data sources that Icelandic demographers have traditionally relied upon, and subsequently the GGS journey. Iceland is in many respects an ideal country for register-based demographic research. We have high-quality population registers, a small and well-defined population, and good opportunities to follow demographic events over time. And I have spent much of my own research career using this data, and I still remain a strong advocate of register-based research. However, there's a difference between identifying where a fertility decline has occurred and understanding why it happened. Registers are exceptionally good at telling us what happened, when it happened, and to whom, but they are much less successful at telling us how people interpret their circumstances, what they expect from the future, or why they decide to postpone, have, or not to have a child. That distinction has become increasingly important in Iceland. Before 2010, Icelandic fertility and family dynamics displayed remarkable stability, but since then something appears to have changed. So my central argument today is that to understand this change, we need to combine the strengths of administrative registers with the type of information provided by the GGS. So let me begin with a period before the decline. For roughly 3 decades, from around 1980 to around 2010, the Icelandic total fertility rate remained both relatively high and remarkably stable. It averaged around 2.1 children per woman, and annual fluctuations were quite modest. But prior to the current decline, the lowest recorded levels were approximately 1.9 or 1.93, first in the mid-1980s and then again in 2002. But Iceland had never experienced a total fertility rate below 1.9. This made Iceland somewhat of an outlier in Europe, while fertility declined to considerably low levels in many countries. Iceland remained close to the replacement level of 2.1. It also tended to have higher fertility than Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden, even though the 5 Nordic countries shared many of the same institutional characteristics. Iceland had high female labor force participation, rising educational attainment, a relatively comprehensive welfare state, and increasingly strong support for dual earner and dual career family model. At the beginning of 2000s, paid parental leave was extended from 6 months to 9, with 3 months reserved to each parent. And subsequently, fathers' use of leave increased dramatically. And around the same time, access to public provided childcare expanded, and particularly so for younger children, aged 1 or 2. The timing of these reforms correspond quite closely with an increase in second and third birth intensities, but we should be careful, of course, not to claim causal effect from timing alone, but the development was at least consistent with the idea that family policies could help parents combine employment and family life. The apparent stability was not simply an artifact of the total fertility rate. When examining parity-specific childbearing in Iceland between 82 and 2013, a gradual postponement of motherhood, particularly so among women in the 20s, have been found. But however, this decline at the younger ages was partly counterbalanced by higher first birth rates among women in their 30s and 40s. So the TFR still increased, actually. There was also little evidence at that point of a major increase in ultimate childlessness, and synthetic cohort estimates suggested that close to 9 out of 10 women became mothers, and among mothers that had one child, almost 9 out of 10 progressed to a second, and among women with 2 children, roughly 2 out of 3 had the third child.
Ari, I'm sorry, I'm just checking because we are still looking at the first slide. So I'm just checking whether we should be looking at something.
No, I just
Okay.
have 10 slides, so
Okay,
it's more of a...
just checking because you had problems before, so I was just checking whether it's whether you wanted to show something else. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, sorry, thank you. So basically, the family formation patterns were equally distinctive but stable during this time. Non-marital childbearing was exceptionally common and still is in Iceland, and registered cohabitation is something that formed an integral part of family building process. About 4 in 5 women registered a cohabiting union before age 46. At the same time, marriage did not disappear though, and around 7 in 10 women had married by that age, and first marriage rates remained relatively stable during most of the period before the financial crisis. So in other words, cohabitation did not simply replace marriage, it just often preceded it. Children were commonly born before marriage, but usually within stable unions. And the Icelandic pattern was maybe flexible in form, but relatively stable in outcome. And this is an important point because Iceland was not demographically static. Parenthood was being postponed. Women's educational attainment was increasing and family forms were changing to some extent. But nevertheless, these changes took place within a system in which the propensity to become a parent, to have a second or third child, and eventually to marry remained comparatively strong. Sorry, I forgot one slide, but you're correct. But then came the financial crisis, and the banking system collapsed in the autumn of 2008. Unemployment increased, household finances deteriorated, and the Icelandic krona depreciated sharply, and the state reduced part of its support to families. The ceiling on parental leave benefits was lowered, and fathers subsequently used fewer leave days than before, and fertility began to fall shortly afterwards. In 2010, the total fertility rate was still 2.22. From that point onwards, however, fertility declined during most years. The rate fell below 2, and has not yet returned to the old level of around 2. According to the most recent figures from Statistics Iceland, the total fertility rate was 1.56 in both 2024 and 2025, and that's the lowest level recorded since annual measurements began in 1853. The last year in which the rate actually exceeded 2 was back in 2012. So at first glance, the interpretation appears quite straightforward. Iceland experienced an exceptionally severe economic crisis, uncertainty increased, public support was reduced, and fertility declined. But the problem is that this explanation becomes less convincing as we move further away from the crash. The Icelandic economy not only recovered, but it also boomed shortly afterwards. Employment increased, real incomes improved, and part of the family policy system were strengthened again. Iceland also remained one of the most gender equal countries in the world, but yet fertility has continued to decline. And of course, Iceland was not alone. The other Nordic countries followed strikingly similar trajectories. In 2025, the total fertility rate was just above, I think, 1.4 in Sweden, around 1.5 in Denmark and Norway, and approximately 1.3 in Finland. But these countries did not experience the same banking collapse as Iceland, some hardly at all. And their economy and policy developments were not identical to Iceland. But nevertheless, the fertility outcomes converged after the crisis. The pattern was also not confined to the Nordic welfare states. During the earlier phase of this development, the United States, for example, experienced a decline of a remarkably similar magnitude, and similar developments emerged across diverse groups of high-income countries. But there was one brief interruption in Iceland during the COVID-19 pandemic. The total fertility rose from 1.79 in 2020 to 1.9 in 2021. This attracted attention because of the increase followed an extension in the paid parental leave scheme, and the leave was lengthened from 10 to 12 months. However, this rise was short-lived. It was driven mainly by higher third birth intensities among educated women who already had children and were in a relatively strong financial position. And this has also been found in the other Nordics. So fertility fell again in 2022, and we did some focus interviews, and they suggested that the temporary rise had less to do with the leave reform than with the unusual social environment of the pandemic. For some parents, ordinary life was on hold. There was more time at home, fewer competing social activities, and perhaps a temporary opening in otherwise busy and highly organized lives of people. So the small baby boom is important because it illustrates the value of asking people about their experiences. Registered data can identify precisely who contributed to the increase and when it occurred, but the interviews helped us to understand how the people involved interpret that moment. So what then can we establish from registered data about the longer decline during the past 15 years or so? Analysis of Icelandic fertility between 2013 and 2022 showed that the decline was concentrated primarily around first births. First birth intensities fell most sharply during the first half of this period, and the decline was largely attributable to women under the age of 30. By contrast, there was no comparable decline in the propensities to have a second and a third child. The second birth rate remained strong, while third birth intensities fluctuated and even increased temporarily during the pandemic. Through 2022, the Icelandic development did therefore not resemble a full-scale decline across all birth orders. It was principally a decline in entry into parenthood. And I believe this distinction matters because a total fertility rate of 1.56 does of course not mean that the average Icelandic woman will necessarily enter reproductive life with exactly 1.56 children, because the total fertility rate is a period measure and it's very sensitive to changes in the timing of births. And registered data allow us to make these distinctions with considerable precision. They tell us whether the decline is concentrated at party 1 or spread across birth orders. They tell us which age groups account for the change. And depending on the available variables, we can examine differences by education, income, employment, residency, partnership status, migration background, and so on. And this is an enormous strength. Without such data, we could easily mistake a decline in first births for a general rejection of family size or larger families, or interpret a tempo change as a completed decline in family size. However, registers, they observe event statuses and recorded characteristics. They do not observe the decision-making process that precedes an event or the absence of an event. And administrative register can tell us that a person did not have a child in a particular year. It cannot tell us whether that person did or did not want a child, wanted one but not yet, or was uncertain about the future, lacked a suitable partner, faced infertility, could not find appropriate housing, was worried about the gap between parental leave and preschool, which is a problem in Iceland, or felt unable to reconcile parenthood with work and other expectations. Similarly, income recorded in a register is not the same as perceived economic security. Employment is not the same as confidence in future employment. Formal access to parental leave is not the same as believing that the benefit will protect the family's living standard of living. And the measure of partnership status does not necessarily capture relationship quality, disagreement about children, or whether household and care work are shared in a way that makes another child seem possible. And the temporary baby boom of 2021 provides a useful demonstration. The registered data showed an increase in third births among relatively advanced women. And if we would have stopped there, we might have attributed the increase to the parental leave reform that took effect at the same time. But the interviews complicated that interpretation. Parents rarely described the reform as decisive, but instead they spoke about time, routines, reduced social activities, financial security, and the feeling that the pandemic had created an unusual moment in which to have a child. So the register, they described the event, but the narratives helped us to interpret it, so to speak. And this brings us to theory. Several established frameworks have provided valuable explanations for fertility change, as we know. Economic theories predict that fertility often declines during recessions because income falls, employment becomes less secure, and couples postpone costly and irreversible commitments, like having a child. Family policy perspectives emphasize whether parents can combine employment and care. Gender relation theories point to the importance of equality in public institutions and within households. And the second demographic transition highlights changing values, individualization, and the weakening connection between marriage and childbearing. So each of these perspectives capture a part of the Icelandic experience, but not fully. The economic crash almost certainly mattered in Iceland. Reductions in parental leave benefits and financial insecurity may have contributed to the initial decline. Family policies also matter. The reforms at the beginning of the century correspond with rising birth intensities, particularly so for second and third births. Gender equality helps us understand why Iceland sustained both high female employment and relatively high fertility. History, cultural heritage, as well as changes in values and family forms help explain why cohabitation and non-marital childbearing became so widespread. But none of these perspectives fully explains the post-2010 development. A purely economic account struggles to explain why fertility continued to fall after the economy recovered. A straightforward family policy explanation is difficult to reconcile with the continued decline after paid parental leave was extended and reformed. Gender relations theories did not lead us to expect record low fertility in the Nordic countries, which combine comparatively high gender equality with extensive public support for families. Gradual value change does not easily explain why the decline accelerated at roughly the same time across countries with different institutional and cultural settings, and so on. In a comparative study of childbearing during and after recessions in the Nordic countries, my colleagues and I described the need to move beyond the economic gaze. The fertility responses to the recessions of the early 1990s differed substantially between countries, but after 2008, after the crash in 2008, the trends became, however, more homogeneous across the countries and remained similar even after the immediate economic crisis had passed. And in that paper, we suggested that the objective economic indicators may be only one part of the explanations. Perceived welfare uncertainty may also matter, whether people trust in institutions will protect them and their children against future hardship. Beyond this, global uncertainty may increasingly shape the narratives of people, how people construct their future or how they see their future. People now, they encounter economic shocks, climate change, war, pandemics, technological disruptions, and social comparison through the same global information environment. And these developments do not need to reduce a person's current income to affect decisions about parenthood, for example. They may instead make the future appear less predictable, less controllable, or simply harder to imagine. However, this remains a hypothesis if we do not observe people's perceptions. And registered data cannot tell us whether Icelanders postponed parenthood because they felt economically insecure, doubted the future capacity of the welfare state, experienced intensive parenting expectations, or imagined their future differently from previous generations. So to examine such explanations, we need a different kind of data. And this is where the generations and gender survey enters the story. The GGS does not replace registered data, nor should it, but its value lies in providing the information that the registers cannot contain and in allowing us to connect subjective conditions with subsequent life course events. The survey in Iceland covered adults from age 18 to 79. It of course uses the harmonized theory-driven questionnaire provided by the GGP. And this provides 3 particularly important advantages for the study of current fertility chains. First, the GGS measures intentions, expectations, and uncertainty before the demographic outcome is necessarily known. It asks whether people intend to have a child, how certain that intention is, what they consider an ideal family size, and under which conditions they might have another child. With follow-up data, we can examine who realizes the intention, who postpones, who revises it, and how changing circumstances are associated with these transitions. This is fundamentally different from asking people retrospectively why a birth did not or did not occur. A panel design allows us to observe intentions and perceptions while the future is still open. Second, the GGS places fertility within a broader organization of people's lives. It includes information on partnerships, relationships, satisfaction, division of household tasks, childcare arrangement, employment, contract type, income, work-life balance, housing satisfaction, health, loneliness, well-being, intergenerational relationship, gender attitudes, and sources of support. And these are not peripheral topics. Decisions about parenthood are made within relationships, households, labor markets, welfare institutions, and social networks. A person may have a stable income but an insecure contract. A couple may support gender equality in principle but divide unpaid work unequally in practice. Parents may have formal access to leave but anticipate a long and difficult unpaid gap to bridge before preschool. And someone may want a child but consider the present relationship, home, workload, or wider social environment unsuitable. Third, the GGS allows us to make meaningful comparisons across countries. Fertility declines simultaneously in Iceland, Finland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and even the United States for that matter. National indicators alone cannot tell us whether similar outcomes stem from similar mechanisms. So harmonized survey data allow us to examine whether uncertainty, fertility intentions, gender arrangements, or perceived constraints operate similarly across different policy and cultural contexts. And for Iceland, this opens a new set of research questions that we have not been able to address before. Is the fall in first births primarily a postponement among people who remain confident that they will eventually become parents, or has uncertainty about parenthood itself increased? Does the combination of secure employment and secure housing matter? Are the expectations attached to good parenting becoming more demanding? And are global concerns entering people's personal narratives of the future, to name a few? Registered data can help us identify the groups and transitions that require explanations, but the GGS data can help us formulate and test explanations that include people's own perspectives. So in sum, registers provide population coverage, reliable event histories, and long-term trends, but the GGS provides intentions, attitudes, relationships, perceived constraints, and longitudinal information about these changes. So together they can move us from a description of declining fertility towards an explanation of the life course process behind it. So for a country with such extensive administrative data such as Iceland, it may seem surprising that the Icelandic fertility research infrastructure has remained relatively underdeveloped. Perhaps in some respects, the abundance of registered data may have concealed the gap. We became good at answering the questions that registers allowed us to ask, but joining the current round of the GGS is therefore important, not simply because it adds another or one more data set. It really creates research infrastructure in Iceland. The Icelandic GGS was conducted by the Social Science Research Institute at the University of Iceland in collaboration with NITI and GGP, of course. And we experienced some challenges along the way during the fieldwork and while we were organizing the work. The first and the largest hindrance was acquiring funding. And if I remember correctly, we managed in our third rather than our fourth attempt to get funding when the Icelandic Research Infrastructure Fund granted us the necessary fundings for this, which we are very grateful for. But the terrain wasn't all smooth after that. Our project manager responsible for the GGS had a child, which is quite fitting for the story. She had a child shortly after, and a new project manager took her place. We also had to translate the questionnaire into Polish as well as Icelandic, which had some delaying effects on the process. A minor change to the questionnaire after we had translated to Icelandic thus had a time-consuming chain reaction. But on the other hand, we got a very valuable help from the Polish GGS team, which we are very grateful for. Another challenge we encountered is also related to that. In a short span of time, migration to Iceland has increased significantly. During the past 20 years or so, the proportion of immigrants in Iceland increased from being around 5% of the population to 20%, and most of whom are of Polish origin. Out of our random sample of 18,000 people related to that, we had 18,000. The random sample was 18,000 potential respondents, but 2,000 invitation letters were sent back to us as the receiver was not located by the postal office, so they had probably moved abroad again, as most of the people were foreign citizens. After sending out invitation letters, the Social Science Research Institute also tried to reach the invites by phone. However, almost 8,000 of those did not have their number registered. In part, migrants are less likely to register their mobile phone numbers, but also this is because young adults in Iceland are reluctant to do so as well. And they're also less willing to answer telephone numbers they do not recognize. So the response rate was not as high as we would have maybe wanted, mainly due to these two reasons. But also, as you know, implementing the survey requires a balance between national relevance and international comparability. Questions must make sense in Icelandic and within Icelandic institutions while remaining sufficiently harmonized for cross-national research. This, of course, can be and was somewhat of a challenge, whether it was related to core demographic questions such as what's your gender, or when localizing the amount of money in some of the questions. Also, the questionnaire is quite demanding because family life is complex and some questions are necessarily personal. and we actually got some complaints from respondents due to this, and some even criticized that it was too focused on heterosexual couples, for instance. So we had various challenges along the way. But today, hopefully just days rather than weeks before the data will be released, we are very happy with our collaboration with the GGP team, and even more so that the process is almost over and that we will have comparable high-quality data relating to fertility and family dynamics available to us. Iceland, in turn, I hope, is a valuable case for the GGP as well. It combines high gender equality, extensive cohabitation, high female employment, and a historically resilient pattern of childbearing and family formation, followed by a rapid fertility decline that our established explanation have not fully anticipated. Also, on a personal note, I'm glad that the GGS does now include all 5 Nordic countries. This is an objective that I have hoped to reach since 2018 while I was doing my PhD studies at Stockholm University, and was supervised by Gunnar Andersson and Gerda Nair, who, among others, gave me the GGS bug, so to speak. And before I conclude, the person whose invaluable contribution to fulfilling this objective is Ásdís Arnalds, a lecturer at the University of Iceland, which I would like to specifically acknowledge in terms of this journey. But finally, if there is one sentence that I would like to highlight, it's this: a register can tell us that a birth did not occur. The GGS can help us understand the future in which that birth did not seem possible or not yet. So the current fertility decline is not merely a falling number, it's the aggregate outcome of thousands of life course decisions made under changing conditions and increasing uncertainty. And to understand those decisions, we need to listen to the people making them, and the GGS is a very valuable data source to do so. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Ari, so much. Thank you for, most importantly, for an excellent case of how GGS can really be combined with good administrative data, because I have a feeling that sometimes we tend to believe that if excellent administrative data is in place, we don't need survey data, but you made it very clear with your story that GGS can actually very nicely complement excellent administrative data. And that's the case for Iceland, that's the case for Nordic countries in general, as you in general have excellent data available in the region. I do have a couple of points I would like to ask, but I would like first to give the opportunity to the people present. Anyone has any questions, comments? Since nobody is brave enough to start, I will actually start. At the moment, you are, of course, at the beginning of the journey analyzing the data, I believe. So the most fun is still ahead. The hard work is done, the fun is ahead. Do you have, it's a very practical question, but we are also at the same stage in Poland, so it's also on the personal interest. What plans do you have for data dissemination, and do you have any plans